Welcome back to ManaTutor MTG Draft. This is our green episode that we're going over. If you haven't seen already our previous episodes, go check those out, especially the one about lands, artifacts, where we go over the grading scale from A to F. But we're reviewing the entire full set of Lord of the Rings, and with that, we'll jump right into it.
Sure, yeah. So first up in the green commons, we have Alvin Farsight. It costs 1 green for a sorcery. Scry 3. Then you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, draw a card. This is going to be a common theme as we go through green and then eventually blue. We kind of got into this a little bit in the multicolored where we talked about green-blue synergies. There's a lot of scry in green, there's a lot of scry in blue, and then there's a lot of creatures in multicolored that have fairly powerful activated abilities whenever you scry. For that reason, I think if you're playing green, you're probably going to be playing a fair amount of scry, so I kind of skipped a synergy grade on this. I think overall, it's a good card for 1 mana, being able to scry 3, arrange the order of your next cards, and then put a creature on top to draw that card. It sucks a little that you got to reveal it, but odds are you're going to play whatever you're going to reveal. So for that, I gave this to C+. I like it.
Yep. Yeah, these kind of cards are interesting because I think they're good cards, but they're not necessarily high picks because they are kind of 1 mana do nothing, so like you don't want to be spending a whole lot of picks. You want to get your actual threats, but these help prep your threats.
Exactly.
It's a strange type of card. I did put, just as a grade, D+. I think this kind of fits into like a good filler type role, but with the synergies, especially those cards that are like, when you scry, do something based upon how many cards you scried, and this is pretty high at 3.
Yeah.
And it does draw a card too, so it plays off that synergy as well, even though there's not necessarily a ton of that in green. But I see your point on the C+. I kind of would like play it kind of like a C+, but I would pick it like a D+. That's all I really have to say there. I'll probably...
Yeah. For me, overall, this is a great turn 1 play. Right, yeah. Like I like this turn 1 because this helps set up your next 3 turns. If you're short a land and you're like, shit, I need an extra land. Okay, great. You can synchronize that so you're drawing it when you want it, and still potentially put the creature on top to draw the card. So I like this as almost as kind of a mana fixer. It's not quite a mana fixer because you're not searching for a land, but it really just the sheer amount you get to scry with this, allows you to sort of really prep your next several turns potentially, or decide you don't want any of those cards and put them on the bottom. Right. So yeah, I like it a lot. But yeah, I can see your thing. And when you're actually drafting it, you may not draft it quite as high. I like my overall C+ for now, but this may come down depending on how popular Scry becomes mechanic in the set.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to stick with my D+, but I just want the commentary here matters. How good of a card I think this is. Yeah. Okay. Up next, we have Many Partings. For 1 green mana, you get a sorcery with search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle, create a food token. Somewhat similar in that I don't think this is a high pick, but I don't mind the card. It helps you fix. It tacks on a food for a pretty cheap bonus. I like all that. With that, I have this as a C-. I like the fixing a little bit more than I do the scry right now, but honestly, I'm not sure how long that will hold. It's kind of in the same realm as the last card, but I have this at C-.
Yeah, I also have this as a C-, although I think it jumps up a bit for me if I'm, splashing a 3rd color or something like that, because obviously it's good to just really help fix your mana base in that situation. But I think overall, since most decks will probably tend to be 2-color decks, I think a C- is appropriate. The more I read them, the less I like food tokens as a general rule. Maybe I'm way off on that. Maybe they'll be powerful in the set, but having to pay the 2 mana to actually use the thing is to me it's great if you have the mana, but if you have the mana, it means you're not playing other things, and this is a subpar use of 2 mana to gain 3 life. So but yeah, I mean, 1 mana to find a land and put it in your hand is not terrible. So yeah, C-.
Okay.
So next up, we have the last one, or no, not the last. There's one more, 1 cost after this, but we have Mirkwood Spider for 1 green. You get a 1/1 creature spider with Death Touch, and whenever Mirkwood Spider attacks, target legendary creature you control gains Death Touch until end of turn. I like this 1/1 for 1. It's a 1/1 for 1 with almost a bit of evasion on it, because people don't really want to block a 1/1 with Death Touch. It's just sort of a waste of a blocker. Whatever blocks, it's going to die. Unless they have a token that they don't really care about, or something, that they don't care about, they just tend to just let it go through. And so you're going to be able to use that when this attacks, giving something Death Touch. And you can give Death Touch to your Ring Bearer then, and then no one wants to block your Ring Bearer, and then your Ring Bearer gets to trigger extra ability. So I actually really like this card. I mean, 1/1 for 1 is not necessarily the best, but this all actually, to me, pulls me into green, and I would probably take this at a B-.
Yeah, so while I'm not that high on it, and I mentioned the 1/1 for 1 thing, I like them when they have Death Touch on them. Yeah. That brings it up quite a bit. So I'm just at a solid C here. I think it's a good rate, good playable card. But I can see where you're coming from, that it's really efficient, and a 1/1 Death Toucher for 1 that's good.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Pippin'S Bravery. For 1 green, you get an instant. You may sacrifice a food. If you do, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. Otherwise, that creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's a fine trick. It's nice that it can push a lot of damage by sacrificing a food if that's relevant in your game state. Otherwise, it's just a fine trick. I'm at a D+. I think this is just filler, but it's, decent filler for a trick.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher. I have it at a C-, but I agree with everything you said. It's a decent trick. It's obviously better with food. To me, this is almost a better use of food than paying and spending the food. I'd honestly much rather give another creature +2/+2 more and not have to spend the 2 mana on the food. So, I actually kind of like that aspect of it, because I think it's actually a better use of food in most circumstances. But, I would probably take this a little bit above filler, but not much. And I can certainly see many cases where I would just let it sit there and take something else instead. So next up, we have the first of our 2 costs. We have Bombadil's Song for 1 and colorless and 1 green. Instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until end of turn. The ring tempts you. So this is one of those that when it comes in handy, it's going to be really good. It's going to save a creature. It's going to save it from destroy target creature, damage being dealt to it, any form of other removal such as exile, and the +1/+1 may or may not come in handy in that circumstance. It'll depend on whether they're playing it in combat or not, but the ring tempts you is nice. Certainly, that's gonna pay off at some time or another. So I have this as a solid C. I think it's a decent trick to protect a creature. It's cheap enough that it allows you to do so reliably. You're not going to have to leave a bunch of mana open all the time if you're afraid your opponent's going to cast something. So yeah, what do you think?
I agree with everything you said. I got a C- with the same reasoning, but no material difference in the analysis.
All right.
Up next, we have Entish Fury for 1 green. You get a sorcery with put a +1 counter on target creature you control if its power is 4 or greater. Then that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn and fights target creature you don't control. Fight spells are fine. They're not as good as bite, but it does add the +1/+1 onto that, and potentially +2/+2. I have this as a C. I think it's just a solid playable. What do you think?
Yeah, I have it a little lower than that. I have it as C minus. To me, it suffers from being a sorcery. It's one of those things that I think you'd much rather have this as an instant, to just be able to like throw it off at a time your opponent's not expecting, pre-block or something like that. But it's still decent. The counter is great because it lasts for 2 mana. A counter for 2 mana is by no means necessarily a bad thing. And then the problem is that counter only happens if it's power 4 or greater already. It would be nice if you gave it +1/+1 and then put a counter on it if it was power 4 or greater, right? Like the other way around, I think would actually make this a much better card. But it's not terrible. Yeah, I have it as a C minus.
Okay.
So next up, we have Lothlorien Lookout, which is 1 colorless and a green for a 1/3 creature elf scout, and whenever it attacks, scry 1. This gets kind of back to the idea that green and blue in this set are very much scry colors. Being able to scry 1 on attack is not bad. The fact that it's a 1/3 helps you with that because you don't necessarily mind attacking with this. Sometimes into the mid game. This is not the kind of thing. It's not powerful enough where I think somebody's going to want to multi-block it to kill it. And so, I like this card. I think it's a C+.
Okay, I'm a little bit lower on this one, but I can see where you're coming at with some of the synergy grades and things. So I'm at a D+ because I only want to play this in a scry deck, and if I'm defensive and I missed out on 2 drops, I do see there's the potential with making this a ring bearer though, like where it's you can attack with this and get the scry 1 fairly reliably with all that. So maybe I'm a little bit low, but I'm going to start on the lower end.
Scry 1, then draw and discard.
Right. Yeah, I still see this just as good filler in my mind, but I'll play D pluses. Like this will be in my deck sometimes. But yeah, I'll stick with the D plus for now.
That's fair.
Up next, we have Mushroom Watchdogs. For 1 green, you get a 2/2 dog creature. Sacrifice a food, put a +1/+1 counter on Mushroom Watchdogs. It gains Vigilance until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Passes the vanilla test as a 2/2 for 2, and I think this is a great use of food, putting a +1/+1 counter on your creature and getting a Vigilance until end of turn. I like all that enough to give this a C+. What do you think?
100% agree. Same grade, same rationale. I think I would much rather spend food on something like this than I would rather spend food to actually gain the life most of the time, especially if it's early on in the game, right? You can see a case where you play many partings. Turn 1, get that food, get a land. Turn 2, play Mushroom Dogs. Turn 3, sacrifice the food, and all of a sudden you've got a 3/3 hitting somebody. So, obviously that's a idealized case, but there are many other ways to create food, and so I think this is a good card. Yeah. So next up we have Revive the Shire for 1 colorless and 1 green. It is a sorcery. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand and create a food. So it's good recursion. It's target permanent card, which is nice. It's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a creature, but it's nice to just have that little bit of extra flexibility in case you had to discard a land for some reason, or you had an artifact or an enchantment out that got destroyed and you want to bring it back. So it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility there. The food is a bonus. Overall though, I would probably put this at a solid C.
All right. These cards tend to not perform great when you're paying 2 mana to get back 1 card, even if it's a choice of anything from your graveyard. In limited, they're much better when you can get some card advantage out and get back like 2 of something. So with that, I gave this a D+. It's nice that it has food on it. It's definitely a filler, like a playable card, but I'm not putting it into the C range. For me, it's a D+.
Yeah. No, and you're probably right. I'm probably rating this. I'll come down to a C- on it. I think I'm not sure I would put it down at filler level. just because I think in almost all cases, I'm gonna probably maybe want one of these if I'm playing green, or two just for that ability to bring something back later on.
Yep.
that I may want, especially if it's something that has an ETB effect that I really like.
Yep.
Or any other number of things that would be good. But yeah, I mean, I think I probably initially thought of this too high, so I think I'm going to come down to a C minus.
Yeah, it hurts you a bit when this is stuck in your hand early. Like this is really a late play card. Yeah, and it'd be better if you could throw this away. It's like with the land cycling or something. I like this type of card better, but yeah, they can get something powerful back late in the game. And it is better with the land cyclers. You can cycle something, get that thing back later when you need it type of thing. So there's some synergy going on there too. Up next we have Woe's Pathfinder. For 1 green, you get a 1/1 human shaman creature. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 6 and a green and tap it. Another target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. This is good early, not so great late. At least its ability makes it passable late. Giving +3/+3 and trample can help end a game. So I definitely think this is in the playable range. I think this is better than filler. But I still don't love mana dorks that much when costing 2, it's a little bit more than like a Birds of Paradise or Lana or Elves type of thing. It costs 1. And the late game is just passable. It's pretty expensive to do that thing. So with all that, C- in my mind. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on it. I'm at a C. I think it's a decent mana dork, especially because it taps for any color.
Yep.
I think it certainly helps fix your mana in a situation where you're just a little bit short on something. So especially if you're trying out a 3 color, this is great because it's common. You could get 2 or 3 of these, and then hey, a 3 color deck is totally feasible. So I put it at a C. I think if you're only playing 2 colors, it might drop down a little bit to like a C minus. But I'm curious to see how much that activated ability gets, the 7 cost activated ability gets actually played. Because I think the problem with this is if you play this on turn 2 or turn 3, how often is it going to last until you have 7 mana available to give a creature +3/+3 and trample? Right. I mean, it might. It's probably not a high priority target for your opponent, but it's also one of those things like you're never going to attack and block with it if you want to actually use that ability later. That said, you can obviously tap it for mana, so it's good. But yeah, I'm going to stick with a C, I think, to start on this one. So next up, we have the first of our 3 cost commons. We have Brandywine Farmer for 2 colorless and a green. It is a 1/1 creature, halfling peasant. When it enters or leaves the battlefield, create a food token. It's a 3 cost for a 1/1. I like that it has an ETB and an LTB effect, right? Like, and if you've got a way to sort of flash this and cycle it in and out of the battlefield, great, wonderful. But I don't think it's that good. I really don't. And so I'm going to give this a D.
Yep. It can represent a lot of life with the food stuff combined with being a chump blocker. But that I don't really like to start off my games like on the back foot with low toughness blockers and and food I have to invest in. Yeah, I got a D+, but for no great reason. It's the food, it does create a lot of food, and I want to trust Wizards that that's a strategy. I think it'll be a strategy you could do. And in those decks, you might
7 mana gets you 6 life and a 1/1. Okay, I mean, I don't know that I think that that's a particularly great investment of 7 mana, but it might be. I mean, I think it could certainly synergize though with other cards like the dogs.
Yeah, the Strings are watchdogs and the 4/4s. Yeah, if that's the best you can say about it, it's obviously not good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Up next, we have Chance Met Elves. For 2 and a green, you get a 3/2 elf warrior creature. Whenever you scry, put a +1/+1 counter on chance met elves. This ability triggers only once each turn. Fine rate as a 3/2 for 3. I mean, it's slightly below, but the chance to grow in the scry decks I like a good amount. I have this as a synergy C+. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I have it just as a C, without synergy. But if you're probably playing a fair amount of scry in a green deck, and if you do green blue, you're certainly playing a fair amount of scry, and I would rate this higher as a result, because this has the power to grow pretty significantly, right? And the key thing about it, right, is a lot of scry mechanics are instants. So, this says it triggers only once each turn, but that can be once on your turn and once on your opponent's turn. So, if you've got the elf that scries on attack, I forget the name of it, Lothlorien Lookout, right? And then, you on your opponent's turn have something that scries, this could get pretty powerful, pretty mean, pretty quickly. For just the 3 mana, and then you're getting the scry off of other sources. So yeah, I put it as a solid C. So next up we have Galadrim Bow, and so this is our green equipment. I think each color has basically one of these at the common level, and it costs 2 colorless, 1 green, artifact equipment. It has flash. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control and untap that creature. Equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has reach. And then it also has an equip cost of 2 if it falls off, or your creature, you want to attach it to something else. So, I like this card. I think it's a little more expensive than I would like overall. I would love it if it costed 2. I mean, it would be very good if it costed 2. But I think overall, I still like it. I have it as a C. I really like that it gives reach. I really like that it untaps the creature. This is one of those things where you can attack with something and then, later in the game and potentially then surprise your opponent by saying, hey, look, I've got an extra blocker now. It's more powerful and it can block flying. So, again, and the fact that you get to attach it immediately for free is good in my mind. So much equipment doesn't do that. And that, to me, like if you looked at Gimli's Axe, right, costs the same to play, but then you have to spend 2 more equipping it. And this doesn't suffer from that. So, yeah, overall, I like it fairly well as a C.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, except that, I actually even agreeing with it. The expensiveness, I guess I like less than even less than you do. I can't really get my head around the 3 mana for this. This is one of those cards where, going in, so I'm giving it a D+. I think
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, right? Like I could very quickly come up after using this a few times. It's just, I really liked a trick in March of the Machines called the Arachnoid adaptation that kind of did this for 1 mana and didn't stick around. It was +2/+2 untap reach for 1 green mana, and investing 3 to do something similar, even if it sticks around, seems a bit expensive for me. But I'm a sucker for cheap things, and this doesn't quite pass that test. I agree with you. I would probably jump up to about your grade if this was 1 mana less, but I'm starting with a D+.
That's fair. Yeah, and I might be overrating it. I do think though that this to me is one of those cards that has the potential to really swing the momentum of a game.
It can.
You attack your opponent with a let's say 3/3 or something like that. They don't block it, but then they've got like a 4/4 that's going to come at you next turn, something like that. All of a sudden, no. Now they don't have that, and you have a 4/5, and it has reach. So. Is it always going to do that, though? No, it's not. And the times that it doesn't is going to be, it's going to be a little bit frustrating. But, yeah, I mean, I like it, and maybe I'm rating it a little too high, but, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but something that we'll just have to see with play. I think this card is splitting a lot of people. I've heard a lot of opinions be high and low on this card. All right, up next we have Mirror Guardian. I'm sure I'm butchering like all these names. So any like Lord of the Rings experts out there, I apologize. But for 2 and a green, you get a 4/2 dwarf soldier creature. When Mirror Guardian dies, the ring tempts you. It's a decent rate. I don't mind a 4/2 for 3, and the ring will tempt you when it dies. I guess have this as a C.
Yeah, I think I agree. Basically, same place, same reasons. It's it's like I don't think my initial thinking and looking at it as a 4/2 for 3 is it's like Flame Tongue Pavu, but it obviously doesn't do damage, and so I don't know that the ring tempting you makes up for that, but it's a decent card, and I think it's better than filler. So yeah, C. All right, so next up we have Shower of Arrows for 2 colorless, 1 green, instant, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying, and scry 1. I mean, this is green removal, but it's very limited removal, as we tend to expect in green. It's mostly focused on artifacts or enchantments. This one adds creatures with flying, which I think gives it a little bit more utility, but it's also expensive at 3. The scry on it, it's nice. Again, if you've got other things that give scry, that's fine. But I still would probably tend to think of this on the better side of filler. So for me, it's a D+.
Yeah, I do not think this is the set where you want a card like this that can hit artifacts, enchantments, and flyers. There's not a whole lot of flyers.
Yeah.
So I just had this as a sideboard card. I didn't even give it a grade. I just throw it in your sideboard, and you'll know when you want to pull it in or not. But otherwise, I'm not playing it.
That's fair.
Up next, we have Bag End Porter. For 3 and a green, you get a 4/4 dwarf creature. Whenever Bag End Porter attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. 4/4 for 4 has vanilla test. It has upside where it can grow, and legendary creatures are not uncommon. Well, they are uncommon.
There's a lot of uncommon.
There's a lot of them.
Set, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're not.
I know. I was making the joke. Same joke.
Yeah. The thing is, it's still just a big fatty creature at the end of the day.
That can get blocked by a 1/1.
Yeah. So I have this as a C minus.
Same. Exact same rating, exact same rationale. It could go up to a C depending on how many legendary creatures you already have, right? I mean, I might take this a little bit higher in my third pack if I've got a bunch of legendaries, but like reasonably speaking, you're probably getting +1, +2 on this in your average game or average use of it. And the fact that it doesn't have trample means that, it's probably just going to get blocked by a 1/1 and you're not going to get a whole lot of, value out of it. So, yeah, I mean, I can see a case for it, but it's certainly not filler, but to me, it's the lower end of playable. All right. Next up, we have Galadrim Guide for 3 colorless and 1 green. You get a 3/4 creature Elf Scout. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. It's a little bit below the vanilla test for the 4-cost creature, obviously. But I'm somewhat of a sucker for scry at the same time. So I gave this a C minus. It's decent, especially if you're playing green or green blue, as we've said. There's a lot of scry and there's a lot of mechanics that pop off when you scry. So I don't think it's a terrible card. It's borderline though. I might think this more like a D+ depending on how prevalent scry becomes. But I'll start at a C minus.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on this one than you, but even in my notes said I might be a little too high. So I had this as a C+, and just because it's just a little bit below the vanilla test, but I like late in the game kind of fixing the scry, and with all the synergies and all that, I'm just going to call this a C+, but I do not doubt I'm too high on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you may not be. That's the thing.
Yeah.
With scry, like I could see this in a deck that has a couple of, scry sticks, let's call them, where, permanents that do stuff when you scry. And, this, especially if it's something that does it based on how many cards you're scrying. This is a scry 2, so I could certainly see it coming up. So I may be too low on it, but we'll just kind of have to see.
Yeah, one of the guidelines for scry is you can think of scry 2 as almost like draw a card. So this kind of reads as 4 mana 3/4 draw a card if you use that. It's not quite the same, but with the scry synergies on top of the scry 2, that I think that's what kind of led me to that C+ grade.
Yeah.
All right, up next we have Enraged Huorn. For 4 and a green, you get a 4/5 treeful creature with trample. When it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Below rate, expensive. Sure, you get a ring tempt, but I'm at D+ on this.
Yeah, I have it a little. I have it a little bit higher at a C-, but I broadly agree with what you're saying. For me, the ring tempts you, and the trample brings it up just above filler for me. But it's expensive at 5, so if I took it, I would probably take 1. I certainly wouldn't put 3 of these in a deck, right? So I think it's just above filler. I think it's a fairly low rate, high end card or high cost card. But yeah. All right. So our last common is Generous Ent. It costs 5 colorless and 1 green for a 5/7 creature tree folk. It has reach, and when it enters the battlefield, create a food token. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't. Oh, it also has Forest Cycling 1. I forgot about that.
That is an important part of it.
It is an important part, and it does make a difference in this case. Because to me, without that, this card would be filler. But I think it comes up marginally above filler for that, and I gave it a C-. What do you think?
I just gave it a C. This is one of the lower ones of our land cycling. It doesn't end the game for you like the other ones that are really go towards that. So it does help protect. You get the food, but yeah, I don't think this goes higher than a C. That's it for the commons. Let's move on to the uncommons. Moving on to our green uncommons, we start off with Long List of the Ents. For 1 green mana, you get a saga with 6 chapters. Note a creature type that hasn't been noted for Long List of the Ents. When you cast your next creature spell of that type this turn, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and that's the same for all 6 chapters. This does slowly provide a strong board presence, and it's good value for 1 mana, but it's not board presence in and of itself, and it's a little bit slow. So that's, you're kind of balancing those bits. I can see myself coming up on this in the long term, but it does hurt it also that you can't name the same type twice, so who knows if you're going to get all the value off of it. With all that, I'm starting this one off low. I think it's a D+.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. I agree with the grade. That's my grade as well. Most decks will tend to synergize around creature types. So if you're playing a deck, this is green in this case, you're going to probably have things like elves. You're going to have things like halflings. You're going to have things like tree folk, right? You may not even have 6 different types of creatures to name, in which case this is even less useful than it would be. The fact that it lasts 6 turns, I guess, is somewhat nice, but it does to get the value out of it, you have to play that creature on that turn, and so that is only of utility if you're the maximum value you will get out of this is 6, but odds are you're not going to get the full 6. You might get 3 or 4 +1/+1 counters at most out of it. And for me, I'm not sure that's worth it. I'm not sure it's worth a card slot in the deck especially if that happened. I mean, if you were going to pay 1 mana and get 3 +1/+1 counters on a creature, that would be really good.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly what it's doing here. So I think D+.
Sounds good.
Next up, we have Meriadoc Brandybuck. This is a 2-coster, so he costs 1 colorless, 1 green. For a 2/2 legendary creature, Halfling Citizen, whenever one or more Halflings you control attack a player, create a food token. I mean, he certainly passed the vanilla test. I don't know that his attack ability is going to come into play that often. Halflings tend to be pretty small. That said, if you're building a deck around them, you will have to attack with them. But I don't love food tokens. So, overall, my grade on this one is a C-.
Yeah, there's also only 4 common halflings, and 3 of them are in white. I mean, but granted, green-white is your food deck. So therefore, I gave it a synergy C+. Like, if specifically you're going for the food deck, I'll play this card, But yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'd probably rate this like C- if I'm not in food.
Sure.
Up next, we have Shortcut to Mushrooms. For 1 green, you get an enchantment. When Shortcut to Mushrooms enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So this is pretty when you have food tokens, because you can sacrifice to get your +1/+1 counter, but it's not a creature in and of itself. It can slowly run away with the game, but it's worse than the long list of the Ents, because it's more expensive in my mind. With all that, I give this a D+. I think that this will take a while to take over the game. Maybe that's what the food token strategy is doing. You gain life and gain an advantage slowly over time type of a thing. But I'm just not a big believer in that, so I got a D+ for now.
Yeah, I have it a little bit higher. I have it as a C-, only because I think that, the ring tempting you is good on ETB, but there are more uses for it, I think, than just food tokens, right? Like, hey, you just mentioned Long List of the Ents. Hey, Long List of the Ents leaves the battlefield at some point, and that's a +1/+1 counter. There are other permanents, obviously. Whenever you chump block and it dies, well, actually, no, it only triggers on your turn. So that, if you, lose something in some other ways to combat, if you have a lot of creatures and you're playing wide and you want to maybe slowly convert that to tall, you attack with your 1/1s, let them get blocked, potentially take down your opponent's creatures in the process, or small blockers in the process, and then they kind of come back as a 1/1 counter, right? So, I can see some uses for it, so I put it just slightly higher at a C-. But yeah, I think I broadly agree. All right, next up, we have Entish Restoration. For 2 colorless and 1 green, you get an instant that has sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, instead, search your library for up to 3 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. This is good. I like this card. It's expensive, but, I would not mind playing this in most cases on turn 3, because it's going to give you that little bit of extra ramp for turn 4 and later. Odds are turn 3, you're not going to have a creature power 4 or greater, but I think later game, it could be enough to give you that extra little bit of mana to trigger off your food tokens later, things like that. And so I just put this as a solid C.
Yeah, I have this as a synergy C. I don't really like this kind of effect when you're just getting the 2 lands, but when you're getting 3, it's pretty decent. Landfall, you can get a lot of landfall potentially, cards that are keying off that, thus the synergy grade. Landfall hasn't really looked premium in this set, though, so I'm not...
There's like 2 cards that have it.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't really think it's a huge thing, but synergy C.
Sure. Yeah, most of the time you're going to be paying 3 mana to basically play an extra land.
Yeah.
Which isn't great, but yeah, from my perspective, there's not a lot of ramp in this set, so that's maybe I may be rating it a little too high because of that. But I looked at this and I was like, oh, this is some ramp. So, yeah.
Yeah, I generally like that card at about a D+, maybe like a C-, when you are splashing, but it has more upside than the usual card that we see.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Glorfindel, Dauntless Rescuer. For 2 and a green, you get a 3/2 Elf Noble legendary creature. Whenever you scry, choose one, and Glorfindel, Dauntless Rescuer gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It must be blocked this turn if able, and Glorfindel can't be blocked by more than one creature each combat this turn. I just have this as a nice 3-drop. I think this is just a C. I don't really have much more to say about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I broadly agree. I mean, this is one of those ones that I think is hard for me, right? Because it's really going to come down to how much Scry is actually played, right? Like this is one of those ones again that if you do have like 5 or 6 Scry cards in your deck, Glorfindel has the potential to become a pretty beefy creature, and then you have that ability that you have that he must be blocked. That you can. This is like, potentially going to take out a lot of your opponent's high-profile creatures down the line. But it is very much a hey, it could do this. It doesn't necessarily do this, though. So I think a solid C is about right. All right, so next up we have Peregrine Took. He is a 2 colorless, 1 green for a 2/3 legendary creature halfling citizen. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. He's slightly below the vanilla test for 3 cost for 3/3. I'm not sure about him. It's going to be one of those situations, right? It really, to me, comes down to how much food is going to be used. I'm starting him off, though, at a C-.
Okay. I have this higher, but it's just because if you are in the food deck, you're going to want this. So I'm trying to give the food deck credit, Wizards R&D credit to hopefully they kind of balance us out, and food's better than we're thinking it is. So I want to give some food card a pull into food, and I gave this one the B-. We'll see. I'm not confident on it.
That's fair. I mean, yeah. No, I mean, for me, the thing is you can only pay for so much food. Yeah. Right. Like, so this is like win more in a sense, right? Like at some point, okay, you're going to get that extra food token every time you create a food token, but okay, what use is it if you have 20 food tokens sitting there and you can't pay the mana to activate them?
Yeah, I'm using this card in my draft to get me into food, and then I'm getting all those dogs, right? Just feeding the dogs and dog rush.
Yes. That's fair, yeah. If you pull in Peregrine Took, a few more things, and then like 4 copies of the dogs or something, yeah, I mean that could be viable. But we'll kind of have to see.
I think I'm gonna force that day one, just for fun. All right. Up next we have Stew the Conies. For 2 and a green, you get an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Create a food token. Bite plus food is good. It's too pricey for this to be a pull into green for me, but I have this at a C+. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have it a little bit lower. I think I have it at a C, and mostly just because of the cost. It is an instant. It's instant removal, which is nice. I always like that. I'm willing to probably pay a 1 mana cost premium for my instant speed removal, just to have it as a trick. The food token, again, it's a nice benefit. We'll see how much it comes into play, but it is nice to just basically potentially take out a creature for 3 mana. So yeah, I have a solid C on this one. All right, so next up we have Celeborn the Wise. He is our first 4-coster, so in green. So he is our 3 colorless, 1 green for a 3/3 legendary creature Elf Noble. Whenever you attack with 1 or more elves, scry 1. Obviously, he's an elf himself. And then whenever you scry, Celeborn the Wise gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each card looked at while scrying this way. So this is a good card in my mind. At the very least, he's getting +1/+1 whenever he attacks, and that's great. And you're getting to scry, which is good. Like there's no downside to that in my mind. I think he actually potentially draws me into green with knowing all the scry that's in there, so I'm going to give him a B-.
Ditto again. I don't have anything to add. I got a B- as well.
All right.
Up next, we have Dunedain Rangers. For 3 and a green, you get a 4/4 human ranger creature with landfall. Here it is. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you don't control Ringbearer, the ring tempts you. It's a fine rate. It passes the vanilla test, has a little bit of upside, but it's a 4 mana coster. I gave it a C.
Yeah, I think for me, this is basically a 4/4 for 4, which I would generally rate as a C. The landfall is okay, but the issue is odds are by that time you may already control a Ringbearer. There are a lot of cheaper costs that say the ring tempts you, and you choose your Ringbearer at that point. So obviously your Ringbearer can die, but this may come into play once. Like, you may get the benefit of this landfall once, maybe twice a game. If you're getting it more than that, it's because your Ringbearer is dying a lot, and I'm not sure that it pays a lot. So yeah, I think C's about right. So next up, we have Gift of Strands. It is 3 colorless, 1 green for an enchantment aura. Flash, enchant creature. When Gift of Strands enters the battlefield, scry 2, and enchanted creature gets +3/+3. The flash is nice. The fact that it sticks around is nice, but it's expensive. It is for 4 mana. I like the scry 2 because it'll help set you up potentially for future turns. It's a decent trick, but you have to. It relies on leaving 4 mana open, and I don't know how often you're going to have that. And so for me, this is good filler, but filler nonetheless, and I put it at a D+.
Yeah, for my enchantment auras, I'm usually not a big fan, and I wanted to kind of make a bold statement. I wanted to give an optimistic synergy C+ here. And the reason is, this one I think can eat something pretty well, right? Like, it's +3/+3. So kind of like you like the although this doesn't untap something, which your other one did, but with the scry 2 on top of this, I think it might be decent. So it definitely doesn't pull me into the scry strategy, but I think it's a good filler or good player there. So synergy C+ was my grade.
That's fair. Yeah. Now, and I might be underrating it. I just think having to leave the 4 mana open for this is just going to be. It's what else are you not playing instead?
It's definitely a cost, but in that strategy, you're playing blue, and blue has a lot of things to keep open. A lot of good counter spells and things.
No, that's fair. Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, if you're playing scry, you're probably playing blue. But I'm also thinking, right, that's 2 food tokens to activate, and green has a lot of food tokens. So is this worth more than 6 life? I don't know. It's hard to know in my mind. So yeah, I think I'll stick with a D+, but I could be underrating it.
Yep. All right. Lastly here, we have Quick Beam Upstart Ent. For 4 green, you get a 5/6 Treefolk legendary creature. Whenever it or another Treefolk enters the battlefield under your control, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. This is what you want your top end to look like. You want it to be something that can trample through and end the game. This has kind of some overrun type of effect tapped onto a creature. So while it is still quite expensive, and I don't think pulls me into green, I gave this a C+.
Yeah, exact same grade, exact same reasons. You're not going to reliably trigger this effect on it, except for on itself. There's not a ton of Ents. I'd be interested to see somebody playing a Treefolk deck that, basically played like 3 or 4 different Treefolk, and in this case, it could get even better. But I think, it's a C+. It's a good finisher. This is the kind of thing you play it, you tack out with your creatures that got, +2/+2 and trample. Maybe a couple of those die, but then this guy's waiting in the wings next turn. He's still a 5/6. It sucks that he does not have trample. I would like it if he had trample. That would probably bring it up to a B- to me, but C+ still pretty good.
Yeah, in fact, in my notes I said, could see this being a B-, starting at C+. And yeah, if they had trample, I would definitely make that switch to B-. Sounds good.
Right.
That is it for our uncommons in green. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Do that now. We will have more episodes coming on up, with white being our next one, followed by blue, and then all the mythics and rares after that. So stay tuned. Hit the notification bell to get notifications, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.